For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd and Jeff Shade.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake Floyd, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about markets, politics, and retirement income, what really matters right now. Also, why so many Americans are delaying retirement and what to do about it, rebalancing your investments as you get nearer or enter retirement, and finally, retirement planning questions that everyone should consider. My name's Jeff Shade. As always, I'm just here to ask the questions. But the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Randy Floyd, President and CEO of Floyd Financial Group. Good morning, Randy. How are you today?
Good morning, Jeff. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. You're still President and CEO. Basically, you've handed the reins over to Jake, right?
That is true. That's been about 3 years ago or coming up on it now.
So you're just an employee of Jake's, your son's employee, right?
That's exactly it.
Remember the kids used to say, you're not the boss of me. Well,
yeah, well, maybe so now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, Randy, it's always great to talk to you. I know Jake is very busy helping clients this week, so you and I are going to do it solo today. And we're going to start off with talking about current events a little bit, or basically things that are in the headlines. Today, we're talking about what's moving the markets and, more importantly, what it means for retirees and investors who depend on their money for income. A lot to unpack right now. One of the biggest headlines I'm seeing is concern that political pressure, specifically a criminal investigation involving Fed Chair Jerome Powell, could undermine the Fed Reserve's independence. And markets have reacted with a weaker dollar and record gold prices and some volatility. Why does this get investors so nervous? And what is this criminal investigation?
Well, you know, there was an old movie. What was it called? It's a wild, wild, wild world.
I remember that one. Jonathan
like
Winters in that one, yeah.
I think you're right. So anyway, that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, if you think about all the stuff that's going on globally, it is absolutely insane. But back to the Federal Reserve deal. So basically, in history, looking back, we've always had what we call an independent Fed, and that is it's not looking at any political party. It's not looking to satisfy the market. It's looking at its mandate. And what is the mandate? To keep people employed and to keep inflation in check. And so, you know, as we look at the Federal Reserve banks and we look at Jerome Powell as the head of those things, or the one that delivers the news after everybody reached consensus on what interest rates should be and how to control inflation. I mean, basically, Trump has said, look, we need to be moving interest rates down quicker than we have been. They're saying, well, you know, inflation is still not where we want it to be because it's been running at 2.7, maybe even as much as 3% here of late. And so they're saying it's not to our 2%, so we don't feel like it's time to cut rates. However, if we look back over our shoulder, prior to COVID, we had a period where we had zero interest rates at the Fed level, and we had 3% mortgages on houses. And we couldn't get to 2% inflation for quite some time there. So there's a real disconnect there, I think, between what the Federal Reserve is saying and what politically President Trump is saying. If we look back to the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, when inflation was high before, and how all those things, it was just crazy. I mean, the guy that ran things back then was Volcker. In one day, I believe he raised interest rates 8%.
Wow, yeah.
And here, looking back over our shoulder, Powell did that back in 22, starting in March. He raised interest rates from 0 to about 5.25% over about 14 months. And so we've seen all this stuff play out before. But really what is important here is Trump's trying to apply some pressure. Now, granted, the remodeling and the rebuilding, if you will, of the Federal Reserve building and that sort of thing, the cost of that was somewhere between $2.5 and $4 billion to fix that building. That's a little egregious. And so who knows, as they look into this, what they might find as far as how contractors have acted and what's going on there. Do I think Jerome Powell's a criminal? He doesn't strike me as one, but again, hey, I guess some of the best criminals in the world didn't strike you as one.
Right. They sort of fly under the radar. He doesn't look like a criminal, but sometimes.
Kind of like Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, exactly. He looked like George Washington to me, though. I don't know.
A little bit, yeah.
He really did. Anyway, sounds like Jerome Powell is going kicking and screaming here now. Trump is going to have somebody, I think, in office because Powell's reign is over in a couple of months here. And the person who's going to take over probably will be a little more agreeable with Trump. So do you think that means we're going to have more interest rate reductions here in the spring?
Yeah, I would say that most likely that is the case. Now, May is the end of his term. We'll see what happens and how much he can be squeezed between now and then. He's stayed pretty tough. He's tried to stay independent here. Nobody knows who Trump will ultimately pick. I would throw my hat in the ring for Kevin Hassett if I were betting today, is what I would say, because I think that he and Trump see eye to eye on so many things there. Again, independence of the Fed is important in many ways because we don't want people with just political motivation to come in and change how everything runs in the world monetarily, right? We don't need a big whipsaw effect every time the Democrats are in and the Republicans are in. We don't need to have that going back and forth. But again, what the Fed does and how it affects investment and the price of things and stability of markets it's very important. It's really important to retirees for things to remain affordable and also to try to have some predictability in markets and things based on what interest rates do.
Talking with Randy Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, and our phone lines right now are open at 417-889-7233. If you'd like to request your Floyd Financial Group retirement review, no cost to obligation, you can make that call right now at 417-889-7233. Leave your name, telephone number. Ashley will get back to you and set up that appointment. A lot of moving parts in the headlines today. Randy, let's move on to older investors' anxiety about volatility. A recent survey found that 73% of investors over the age of 50 are anxious about how market swings could affect retirement income. Are you seeing that concern in real life with the people that you meet with in general?
Yeah, so we have a very wide swing of clients here, people with more money than they could ever spend, and then people that need to wring every penny out of the money that they've saved, right? So we have that complete gamut there. So yes, we have those people that are holding back on spending, that are saying, hey, I'm going to wait for a better day to spend. Now, quite frankly, if we look back over our shoulder, though, at the market the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a pretty good time to spend. If you're invested, you've made pretty good money. But again, it's this feeling of insecurity and in the anxiety about all the things going on in the world. A lot of people say, what's the stock market going to do? Well, we have all kinds of things we look at to determine that, but public sentiment and how people feel about things is a really big factor in how markets go and how much cash is kept on the sidelines during these times where things are kind of iffy and people are just trying to figure out what's going on.
Randy, there's also talk of a $4 trillion retirement savings gap. $4 trillion driving demand for pension-like income. What is behind that?
Over the years, used to be everybody got a pension, right? So you worked for the company for 30 years, you got a gold watch, and you kicked you out the door with a pension. So that was a great thing. But today, I don't know what the number is. Probably, it used to be 16% of people that work is what are left with having the ability to have a pension now, but I'm not sure it's even that high anymore. And this $4 trillion gap, you got to be careful who you listen to. And I will tell you that we hear, as we go out and look at social media and things, everybody's saying, oh, we're so broke, we can't pay attention, we can't do anything. It's just this, that, and wine and wine and wine. But I will tell you that people today live at a higher level than they've ever lived at. And the fact that maybe they overspend is not the fact that they are short on money. It's just that they were marketed to so much. It's not their fault. We're marketed to so much. In fact, somebody said that the average person today, now you're going to think this is crazy, but think about it for a minute, sees 10,000 advertisements.
Wow, that's incredible.
10,000.
Yeah.
Well, and they play to what? Your emotion.
Absolutely.
You got to have it now. You got to go spend it. There's no delayed gratification. So I will say, yes, there's probably people that could use more income in retirement, but is there a $4 trillion gap there? And how does that boil down to the individual? $4 trillion seems like a lot of money, but if you've got 50 million retirees divided into 4 trillion, it's not as much as it sounds, right? Yes, it does lead people to look for safer investments, to maybe turn toward annuities, maybe some bond funds and that sort of thing, where people have more income that they can count on. And I will tell you today that there are some ways to generate dividends and things savings, through high income funds that allow us to help give people some more predictable monthly income than just waiting for the market to perform.
Randy, some investors worry that guaranteed income products such as the ones that you mentioned, and we were talking about annuities and bond ladders, that sort of thing, are giving up growth. Is that always the case?
So based on what your risk tolerance is, if we were to look at things just historically, there's nothing that's outperformed the stock market over the last 40, 50, 60 years in terms of return, right? It's a great place to grow money, but it's not a great place to protect money. So one of the things we'll talk about later in the show today is what are the times when I am in my life cycle, if you will, when should I be taking the greatest risk? When do I start to turn down the risk? And when do I start to look toward income and protecting what I've grown? In some cases, it's true that if you're going to have guaranteed income, you're going to give up some opportunity for growth. So it goes back to that old question we've talked about several times on here, Jeff, and that is, would you rather have $1 million or $50,000 a year guaranteed for life? I've said many times, I'll take the $1 million because I know all it takes is a 5% return to have my cake and eat it too. And I'm a boomer. We're mostly boomers out here retiring now.
Right.
And we want to have our cake and eat it too.
Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Once again, our phone number 417-889-7233. Randy, the 4% rule is back in the news again today, and analysts are challenging this traditional 4% withdrawal rate, saying that it doesn't always hold up in today's market. What is changing here about that?
Like you said, in the past, people have always tried to say, okay, so what's the rule of thumb that says I can go out and start withdrawing money, and I know I'm not going to run out of money? Well, if you think about it, if you look at the 4% rule, if you have a conservative investor that's withdrawing 4%, and they have very little volatility in their account, it takes 25 years to spend the money. So not much of a risk. And it was a way for analysts, I think, to, in the beginning, to look at that and say, okay, we can make this a no-brainer. And we can just say 4% is what it looks like, and then we can adjust that for inflation. Because if you think about inflation, if inflation is 2%, you don't get much of a bump there, right? You get about less than 1/10. So next year it's 4.1, then 4.2. But here's the thing. That rule was I think they created that when it was during some times of really low interest rates, and there had been a lot of market volatility. 2000, basically 7 through about 2017 was what we call the lost decade out there. 2000 to 2010 was for sure that, because we had 2 down cycles through there, 2001 and 2, and then we had 2006, 7, 8, and 9, I should say. And we had almost no growth through there. So that was a safe assumption back through there. I will tell you that here at Floyd Financial Group, the way we build portfolios, we know that we can, over the long haul, deliver 5 to 5.5% withdrawal rates for most people. So that basically means $50,000 to $55,000 per million on investment. And generally, we could even grow the money beyond that, because again, beyond what you take as a regular income, you're going to need a car once in a while. The roof is going to leak. Something's going to happen to the pool, or whatever it is. So we need to be sure that we look at this. And like it says, withdrawals should be dynamic. They should change as times change, because nothing's static in the market. It's always up. It's always down. Real estate markets are up and down. Cattle markets are up and down. Stock markets are up and down. Interest rates are up and down. Everything's a moving target. It should be a dynamic amount. And that's why reviews every 6 months are very important for people in retirement, so they stay connected to their money.
Randy, considering all the things that we have talked about here, if someone listening to the show today feels overwhelmed by headlines and volatility, what are the top steps that you think that they should take right now?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I think number one, they should sit down and really look at how much income am I taking? What am I pulling right now? Versus also, they need to really sit down and take a look at what they're spending as well. I just did this exercise in my own life here recently, because through church, we were teaching a program called Money Wise. And basically what it did was it led us down a path of looking at how do we spend money? Where do we spend money? And what we found out is there were a lot of holes in our bucket. And so when you got holes in a bucket and you're trying to fill one, that makes it more difficult, right?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
So the first is look at your income plan, and then look at what you're spending, and then sit down with somebody that can help you to see what your risk is and determine what your risk tolerance is and really see if you can tweak your plan in better. And I will just tell you, by doing that, it will reveal some things. And there's several things that you can do online where you can actually use things like Rocket Money and some of those things that will allow you to go out and figure out where you have holes in your bucket and where you're spending. And again, people say, well, I don't think I'm spending anything. I don't think I can save any money. I think I'm doing really good. I promise you, when you go out there and you look at it, you'll find some things. In fact, if nothing else, what you'll find, you have a recurring withdrawal from a subscription for something you took 4 years ago that you haven't used in 2 years.
I have those, Randy, and my bucket has so many holes in it. I think I've got about 3 Netflix subscriptions. I do have online subscriptions to things that I don't look at. And really, I think that's something, what do you think that you've got to do at least once a year is review those things. Take a look at your bank statement, see what's coming out of there.
Well, I'll tell you something else that's kind of interesting about this, and we'll wrap up with this, Jeff.
Yeah, sure.
As we went through and we did this and we looked at what we were really, because I've always had a spreadsheet and things like that, but I decided, I'm going to go out and I'm going to use this Rocket Money program. So what it does is it helps you to build a complete picture of your income, your withdrawals, and where the money goes. It'll also develop your net worth. And one of the things that we talk about in this MoneyWise class is that it's called assets under management.
Right.
We don't own these assets, right? The creator ultimately owns all the assets, but we get to use them while we're here on the planet. So we all want to be good stewards and we want to build assets under management, not deplete assets under management.
Right.
And so what it will do is it gives you a snapshot month to month, and you can set up your recurring stuff that comes out. Plus it'll track all your credit cards and all those things for you and automatically load those once you link it. And so it really is one of those things that will really help you suss out exactly where you can save if you need to, or where you might say, well, gee, I'd rather repurpose that money for this rather than that.
And that app, once again, is called Rocket Money. They're not a sponsor of the show, but it is a good product here. Randy, I want to take just a moment here to talk to our listeners. If you're listening to our show right now and you're wondering whether your retirement income plan is built to handle inflation, volatility, and longer life expectancy, help is available to you, and you can get it by calling 417-889-7233 today to schedule your Floyd Financial Group retirement income analysis. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. Once again, that number is 417-889-7233. You can make that call right now. Randy, let's take a break here on Show Me the Money. When we come back, we're going to be talking about why so many Americans are delaying retirement and what to do about it when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy Floyd. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about people want to retire but aren't sure that they can, and the big picture and what's changed.
Right, Randy, and survey after survey shows a growing number of newer retirees are delaying retirement. And some studies say 25%, others say as high as 70% are at least considering pushing it back. What's driving this, Randy?
Yeah, so a lot of it, Jeff, looking back over our shoulder here, the last 5 full years, 2020, January 2020 was COVID, the start of that. We have been through a train wreck, both from an employment, productivity, market, money availability, the amount of money just in the system. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing, out of control. People saw their purchasing power slashed as we printed all that money and put it in the system, and prices just kept going higher. So they just don't know what to expect. Of course, we still have a ton of uncertainty. Globally, things are kind of a mess. So they just don't feel confident that they can retire and derive the income and make it last for maybe a 30-year retirement. And the other thing we haven't talked about is how much longer people are living and how 65 today is 45 20 years ago.
Right. 65 is just middle age. Actually, you don't get old until you decide to get old, or it's not your choice, but you're right. 65, well, that's the new 45. Inflation is still another thing that makes people a little bit uneasy, Randy. Inflation has cooled from its peak, but people still feel uneasy about it. Why does inflation hit retirees or near retirees so hard?
Well, one of the realizations that people have when they retire is all of a sudden, and my sister said it best, I'm on a fixed income. I don't know how to deal with that. And that is really kind of a reality that when you retire, all of a sudden, your ability to generate more based on what you do every day is gone. So now you have to rely upon your financial advisor and what you've saved over your lifetime and those investments that you have to pay for the groceries, the insurance, the utilities, taxes, and all those things. And so even an extra $5 here and $10 there seems out of control.
Right. And used to cruise through McDonald's, it'd be $5. Now it's like $10.83 pull around for the whatever it is, the sandwich that you're getting there. And
for a Big Mac with no drink, right?
Exactly. That'd be $10.83. And you got the SUV in front of you and it's got 4 kids in there and they don't refresh the menu. I'm getting a Diet Coke and it says $43.25 for basically a nothing meal. And just the prices of everything have gone up. I remember, and I don't know if you remember, Randy, when you'd go to the doctor and it would be like $12 or something like that. Now you take a look and you get the EOB, the explanation benefits, and it says they charge you $463.
Right.
Your insurance paid $252 or something like that. So even though inflation has cooled from its peak, people still seem to be very uneasy about that. About 35% of Americans say they're delaying retirement even though they'd rather stop working sooner. The number one reason, not enough savings. What are you seeing in real life, Randy? The people who come into you there in the last bastion of sanity, do they many times have enough savings or occasionally do people just come up short? And if they do, what do we do?
Right. One of the things we talked about in our MoneyWise class is the fact that there's no rectifying starting too late, right? The time and money is a huge thing. We've heard that all of our lives. But we do see people that have done everything right, but they just didn't quite save enough, or like I said, maybe they got started too late. And then, of course, we got life events, layoffs, we have divorces, we have medical issues, and the key issue maybe isn't their judgment, it's whether or not they have enough money and have saved enough money to match the lifestyle that they want to have. And I think that's because when people come in and sit down with us, we're very real about, let's figure out, we know what your gross salary is and yeehaw, those are great, but what's the net money that comes into your account that you're spending every month? Now realize you're funding your 401k, you're funding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid that you will not fund once you're retired. And then sometimes later in life, people are funding a lot of money into these retirement plans. So they feel like they have a whole lot more money than they actually do. But we want to see what they're actually spending each month and see if that budget will support their lifestyle. And in many cases, like you said, they're going, you know what, I think I'm going to wait another year or two before I pull the trigger on that.
Randy, another reason why people don't think that they can retire is because they're part of the sandwich generation. They're not only supporting themselves in retirement, but they're looking for a way to support their adult children who are still living with them. A huge percentage of adult children are still living at home. And also many times because of longevity risk, they're supporting parents. That is a very real thing these days, isn't it?
It surely is. You know, in fact, I was reading a survey here. You know what the correct age for your adult children to leave home is?
You kick them out about 19, but what does it say?
28.8.
Oh my gosh, Randy, I was 10 years on my own by the
I couldn't wait to get away from home and get on my own. Not that I had a horrible home life. I just wanted to get out and get something done on my own.
Same
But
way.
yeah, you're right. There's a whole bunch of people that are caught in that situation to where they're the bologna between two slices of bread, right?
It's no accident you picked that meat, huh?
Growing up, I love bologna sandwiches.
Yeah,
you know?
I did too.
Nothing like that to come home and get a nice bologna sandwich with mayonnaise and lettuce and a little onion.
So that's the sandwich generation, and it is something that is very, very real today. We're not only taking care of adult children, which I think does them a disservice, because when they finally do leave home, they don't have any experience. They really don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet. And of course, with your parents, many times they have not been able to stand on their own 2 feet because things have just gotten more expensive and they haven't learned how to deal with that. Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Once again, our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to come and sit down and talk with Randy about your retirement journey at no cost and no obligation, you can make that call right now at 417-889-7233. Leave your name, telephone number. Ashley will call you back and set up that appointment on your schedule and Randy and Jake's schedule here. Another factor people mention is Social Security, Randy. They're worried about cuts or long-term viability. How valid are those concerns, do you think, for people who are roughly retirement age now?
So, you know, each year they keep raising the level to which people contribute out of their salaries if they're working to Social Security. I think that number's up nearly $180,000 right now. I think there's going to have to be some changes made to Social Security. People that are retired now, I don't think have much to worry about. And maybe even, if you're retiring in the next, this is a little speculation on my part, next 2 or 3, 4, or 5 years, you may still be fine. But there will come a reckoning day to where if you've got a lot of savings, I can foresee the day that they will means-based test you. And they say, well, Randy, you've got $75,000 a year in investment income that comes in, so we're going to cut your Social Security by 50%. I don't know. I can foresee something coming like that. I don't know when it is. That hasn't been talked about. That is just speculation on my part. But I think it is important that people that are not retired now are thinking in terms of the fact that maybe 70-80% of Social Security that you expect might be what you get to keep long term. And it certainly would not hurt to plan for that, even if it doesn't happen, because you'll just land in a better spot.
And what you're saying is for our younger listeners, let's say Jake, who's, 41 years of age, that might be the case for him. But if you're talking about you and me who are retirement age, maybe we haven't retired, but nevertheless, we're probably not going to see too much of a change there. So we have to think about Social Security just a little bit different. We're also seeing more people retire, Randy, and then they go back to work. What is behind this unretirement trend? Is it always just about the money?
No, it's not. I was sitting with a gentleman yesterday, and we sat down, and I hadn't seen him for about 6 months. So I said, hey, how's retirement? He said, after about 3 or 4 months, I'm looking around thinking, okay, now what?
Yeah.
My dad used to say this, Randy, you can only play so much. And there is a little bit of truth to that. But I think what it amounts to, people are looking for structure, something to look forward to in the morning to get up, mental stimulation. I think that we're going to see more and more of people doing part-time jobs, especially since people can do a lot of work from home now.
Yeah.
They can do part-time and have a flexible schedule. But now I will say this, some of that's going to change with AI coming to the forefront more and more. A lot of these customer service jobs that have been being done at home by people, I'm going to tell you AI is going to replace some of that. So people need to be considering that.
Yeah, and AI or working from home is one thing, but I think that one thing that people miss a lot is just the social interaction. So maybe they go to work at Ace Hardware or Walmart or something like that, or they go to work in some other situation where they're around younger people. I think it is so important to do that because social interaction is one of the big keys towards being viable as you get older. Let's wrap this up a little bit, Randy, and for listeners thinking, that's me, what should I do next? What is your advice?
Yeah, so I always tell people you just need to have a plan and we need to think things through. When you first sit down and you start thinking about retirement, you think, well, I know what that's going to be like. But not really. You need to sit down with somebody that's helped guide people through this process a lot. And we've done this, literally thousands of times at this point. And we can kind of help you see the nooks and crannies and the pitfalls that you might not figure out on your own. People retire maybe once in a lifetime. Some people have done it more. They've had a couple of jobs and they've retired a couple of times. We see a few of those folks. But for most people, they're going to retire one time. So they don't have a lot of experience with it. It sounds simple. It sounds easy. But in reality, it's not that simple and that easy. You need to have a plan and you need to have someone that's helped people do it before that can guide you through a process that's going to help you to land where you really want to go in retirement.
And Randy, once again, I want to remind our listeners that if you're not sure whether your retirement plan will truly support the lifestyle that you want, right now is the time to find out. You can do that by calling 417-889-7233 and request your Floyd Financial Group Retirement Readiness Review and see where you stand. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Randy, let's take another break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about rebalancing your investments as you near and enter retirement when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk. If you're planning to retire soon or are already in retirement, you more than likely have some questions, like when should I take Social Security? How can I avoid running out of money? Or how am I going to deal with taxes in retirement? Floyd Financial Group in Springfield can help answer these questions. They've been designing retirement plans for people like you for more than 20 years. They recognize that you're unique, so your plan is tailored to your unique individual needs. They'll work with you to determine what it costs to be you in retirement, then design a cash flow plan, tax plan, a plan for paying for health and long-term care expenses, an estate plan, and how to pay for the uncertainties in life. If you'd like to begin a conversation to answer your questions, call for your no-cost, no-obligation, no-judgment financial review. Call 417-889-7233. That's 417-889-7233. Or request your plan online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Floyd Financial Group, LLC is an SEC registered investment advisor.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about rebalancing your investments as you near or enter retirement.
And Randy, this is something that doesn't get nearly enough attention, but it can make or break your retirement, rebalancing your investments. It's a critical topic for anyone with 10 to 15 years of retirement or already retired. So let's start with the basics, Randy. Why does rebalancing become more important as people approach retirement?
Yeah, sure thing. That's a great question, and it really does need to be addressed. So when you're younger, volatility in the market doesn't matter as much because you have all this time ahead of you. So from the time you're 20 until probably you're about 50, you need to be more aggressive and really probably own mainly stocks. Not that you don't need some guidance through there. You do, as far as how much you're saving and looking down the road as to what you think you want your retirement to look like. Now, I know people 25 and 30 and 35 say, retirement's so far away, I don't know what that's going to look like. But you should begin with the end in mind, for sure. So it's just like planning a trip. If you don't begin with the end in mind, you'll never know when you got there, right? So we want to make sure that we've done that. But volatility is not a major thing when you're younger. But as you get closer to retirement, probably in the around 50 or so, it's going to be really important that we're always looking at rebalancing accounts, because what happens is you'll maybe be invested in an asset class that grows really rapidly, like an example now would be AI. At some point, AI will run its course and it will have to have a little bit of a reset, or people will do a sector rotation out of there into something else. And so that's why rebalancing is something that's crucial. You don't want to get overly heavy in any one area, and that's something that you'll have to discuss with us, and we discuss with you as we go along and watch your investments as to how we rebalance.
And Randy, you mentioned the age of 50, it's pre-retirement. What should people be doing differently with their investments? I understand this is sort of a danger zone, so to speak.
Well, here's what happens. Markets typically are up somewhere around 70% of the time, but they do cycle. And I think the average bull run is around 5 or 6 years. We've seen some longer ones than that here of late. And then we have our downturns of 18 to 24 months, and sometimes a little longer than that, but generally that's what it is. And so as we get closer to retirement, what we don't want to do is have one of those bear markets come in and really knock our knees out from under us right as we're ready to pull the trigger. Now, I will say this. We can retire people in pretty much any market because we use investments that are fitting for the time that people are pulling the trigger. We had people that retired right in the middle of COVID that have done absolutely fine. No issues there at all. But we had to build the plan slightly different and use different tools than we would use today. Now, this market we're in right now, we're up here for a few years. We still think there's upside for market growth, but we're watching very carefully for any cracks in the structure.
Randy, we often talk about rules here in the radio program and the fact that rules sometimes are made to be broken. You often hear the rule of thumb like the rule of 110. Can you explain what the rule of 110 means and how useful it really is?
Yeah, so the rule of 110 basically says take whatever your age is, subtract it from 110. So if we're 60, we take it from 110, that's 50. That basically says that you should have about 50% of your portfolio in stocks, and the rest should be in something a little bit more conservative to support income and all the things that you need in retirement. Now, I will tell you that that's a general guideline. It's not one that we use steadfast for everybody. Everybody's risk tolerance and capacity for risk is different. The capacity meaning some people don't need but 2 or 3% of income off of their investments because they've saved a lot of money over time. Other people need 5 or maybe even 6% off their investments to make retirement work. So each of those people obviously has a different portfolio design. So the rule of 110 is a good guideline, but what goes into that 50% stocks? What stocks do we buy? That's the things that we need to be looking at.
Randy, in pre-retirement, we had a lot of growth stocks here. As people rebalance, what kind of investments do you think can replace these growth stocks?
So, Jeff, that's a good question. All markets cycle, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. Real estate markets cycle. During COVID, we saw real estate spike 60%, even here in middle America where we live, right? And now it's down probably 15 to 20%, and the market's pretty soft right now. Stock markets, they grow, they take a break, they go back. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down. So when we are looking at retirement, yes, we want to look at shifting maybe some of that investment toward income stream and toward dividends and maybe interest. But we also need to be sure that we're not fighting what's going on as far as, is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates? If they are, that's generally bad for stocks. If they're lowering interest rates, that's generally good for stocks, but bad for bonds and fixed investments, kind of like now with interest rates coming down. Bank CDs, looking back over our shoulder, have been pretty good, but they're getting weaker and weaker. And as this interest rate gets pushed down, money markets and CDs won't make sense anymore. So, we have to be careful how we build a portfolio. And it's one of these things where we just can't set it and forget it. We have to constantly be watching it and watching what's happening in the marketplace.
Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to get in and sit down with Randy or Jake and talk about your individual retirement journey, no cost, no obligation, 417-889-7233. Randy, you talk a lot about cash reserves. Why are they so important heading into retirement?
Right. I'll just give you a case for me. I like to have a pretty considerable amount of cash sitting around just so I know that whatever comes up, I can just handle it. We don't want people going home at night stressed out about what could happen as they lay down to go to sleep and they can't sleep. We want to give people sleep insurance. We want to make sure they know that we're on the case and they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But we also like to have that buffer in there for people so that if we do have a market recess and we need to cut a little bit back, we might be able to. But also the other part of that is they don't know when the car is going to break down, when the roof is going to leak, or when they might have a medical situation that comes up. So cash is really nice to have there just as a shock absorber where you can handle anything that comes along and it's not going to really upset your apple cart and make you go, ah.
Nothing worse than going, because your apple cart is upset. I know what you're talking about there. Randy, once someone is fully retired, let's say 65 plus, how does the strategy change in general?
Yeah, so once somebody's retired, we're always looking for a combination of growth stocks and growth investments, as well as maybe those that pay interest and dividends, right? And how that is built and how that's structured is not something that we just set up and it's static. We have to always be changing that. If a guy comes in and he's 65 and he's retiring, I'm going to make sure that we're setting him up to at least 90. Because people say, well, I'm not going to live that long. Well, you might not. In fact, we know that us guys lived about, 76.8 years?
Something like that.
On average. I think the women are 81. We know that that's the case. But do you want to be 90 and wondering where your next meal is coming from? Probably not. We want to make sure we've planned for that. So we need a combination of growth stock, income producing stock, dividend stocks, but it's a delicate balance and it's something that's changing all the time.
Talking with Randy Floyd about rebalancing your portfolio as you get near or in retirement. One strategy that retirees hear a lot about, Randy, is the bucket approach. How does that work?
Yeah, basically, it's where you divide your assets into 2 or 3 buckets. Short-term cash, what we need for right now. Mid-term, maybe something we're waiting for it to grow and get to where it can produce income for us. And then long-term, something we're going to hold out there that's going to be that final mainstay for us as we get really along in retirement. Now, for some people, this makes sense. And for some people, it absolutely does not make any sense. But here's the thing. We want people to be sure and confident in what's going to happen looking forward, pulling their income stream out of their investments. And again, I'll go back to having a plan, whatever that plan is. And then number 2, following up and staying in contact with your clients and helping them understand what's going on with their investments gives them great peace of mind.
Randy, once someone reaches the age of 73, RMDs enter the picture. How do those fit into rebalancing?
We don't really worry about the RMD picture in the rebalance. We're going to make sure the portfolio is rebalanced. And yes, we're going to take the RMDs because we don't want to pay any penalties there. And we want to do what the government says. We're going to rebalance. The RMD that you have to take doesn't really change anything as far as the taxability of your IRA and how we rebalance. It doesn't really create any problem there.
Randy, we cannot have a financial conversation without talking about taxes. They're always part of the conversation. How do you rebalance without creating unnecessary tax problems?
Yeah, so whatever you have taxable accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, all those sorts of things, those are taxable no matter what. So if we have capital gain in there, you can't really have capital gain in an IRA or a 401k. Why? Because that money has never been taxed, and so it's taxed as ordinary income. Now, some people say, well, I want to convert to a Roth so I can escape that. Well, that's a whole different conversation that we can have. For some people, converting to a Roth makes good sense. For other people, it doesn't. It depends on how much time you have to do the conversion and lots of things. But as far as tax goes, you really can't do in an IRA or a 401k. You can't do tax loss harvesting. You can't do those things that you can do in a regular brokerage account. So good rebalancing doesn't hurt anything inside. You want to do that inside your IRAs and doesn't cost you anything tax-wise.
Randy, final question here. How often should retirees or near retirees be rebalancing?
You know, there are some programs out there that say, hey, we're going to rebalance this portfolio every 30 days. I think that's overkill. I think that rebalancing is something that, yes, we need to look at. But again, what we're looking for in rebalancing is that we don't want to get any market segment that we're invested in overweighted to the point to where it doesn't make sense and where we could really have a big downturn in the event that the market decides to go through a little bit of a bear or just a slight downturn. So rebalancing is more, I think, a product of what's happening with interest rates, what's happening with the money that the Fed is printing or not printing, what's happening with things in general in the economy, what's the growth we're having in the market. All those things factor into how and when we rebalance.
And Randy, I think the takeaway here is rebalancing isn't about guessing markets. It's about managing risk, income, and peace of mind. Very good conversation here, Randy. I want to talk to our listeners for just a moment here. If you're concerned about taxes, required minimum distributions, or making costly withdrawal mistakes in retirement, professional guidance can make a big difference. So call us here at Floyd Financial Group, 417-889-7233, and request your Floyd Financial Group retirement review, no cost and no obligation. It's just a chance for you to sit down, have a one-on-one conversation with Randy or Jake here to talk about your individual journey towards a confident retirement. Again, it's not going to cost you anything at all. It's 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about our firm online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Randy, let's take a break. When we come back here in the final segment of our show today, we're going to be talking about retirement planning questions everyone should consider when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy Floyd. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about retirement planning questions everyone should consider.
And Randy, these are retirement questions that everyone should be asking, but many don't until it's too late. So let's start with the first question here, Randy. How do you want to spend your retirement years? Most people focus on when they want to retire, but you say that they should start with how they want to live. Why is that so important?
Let's think of it this way. Remember that song, The Final Countdown?
Oh, yeah.
That is not retirement. Retirement is just a change. It's a shift in how you're going to live your life.
Right.
So, yes, it is a finish line. We're trying to get there and get to some place that can make sense. But if we aren't careful, we don't know what sense it makes. So, depending on how people want to travel, what kind of hobbies they have, do they want to help people? Are they going to volunteer? Do they want to travel the world? Do they want to have 14 bicycles like me? Do they want, what's important? What's important to you? You want to have a new Garmin watch every week so you can track more heart rates and more HRV, whatever it is. Everybody's situation is different.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you need to be thinking in terms of, yes, it's going to be a transition period for me, but how does that really look and what does it cost me to do that?
Right. They all have different price tags. In your bicycles, you got 14 of them, and I'm sure that some were expensive, others were very, very expensive. So if you don't define the lifestyle first, you can't accurately plan for the income needed to support that lifestyle. Once someone knows what they want in retirement, what they want it to look like, Randy, what is the next step?
Yeah, so really what we want to do is get very specific, and we need to look at, here's where we are. Let's do an analysis of your investments, what your income looks like now. Let's get a real picture of what you're spending. Also, people say, well, I'll probably spend less in retirement. I'm like, maybe not. So we need to really get specific, and we really need to think about and look at what is it going to cost, and do we have the money to support that long term? Because guessing at it and thinking, well, I'll pull out 8% here early on out of my retirement portfolio, and later I'll take it down to maybe 5 after the market has grown some more. A couple things we have to think about. Number one, we never know when things are going to happen to where the market may have a downturn for a year or two, or when it may be that it's going to have 2 years of maybe 10+% growth 2 years in a row. We just don't know when that's going to happen, that sequence of return thing that we talk about. So what we really want to do is design a plan that is viable right now under today's terms and know that we have built-in flexibility to account for bear markets as well as the bull markets that come along and make us really happy.
Talking about some retirement questions that you should be thinking about before you retire. One is the right time to retire, Randy. Is there really a right age to retire?
No. Everybody's situation is so different. My grandma used to say, everybody's got a nose, Randy, and they're all different. And it's the same way with retirement. Everybody's retirement situation is different. When people are ready based on health or just, hey, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, they're going to tell us, and then we're going to help them get there.
And there really is no right age, as you said, to retire. It's a right situation. If you've got your income plan in order, your health care plan, emotional readiness all lined up, then maybe it's time to retire. Some people, they find that all the ducks in a row at 62, others at 70. Some people are 75. If you're like me, it's never going to be a retirement scenario because I plan to work as long as I can work, but it's what I want to do. So that's how I've solved the retirement conundrum. It's not retiring here, Randy.
Right.
We've seen more people retiring early. If they do that, what do they often overlook?
Yeah, basically, we don't know what the ultimate longevity cost will be with healthcare and all those things that come in. But basically, retiring early just means funding more years without any employer or regular earned income coming in. It's got to be coming in off of mainly investments early on, especially if you retire really early prior to 62. You've got to count strictly on your investments and then get Social Security, of course, at 62 or whenever you need that. But it does make things a little bit more difficult when it's early because we just have some additional costs, especially right now on the healthcare side of things. It's a crazy world out there.
It absolutely is. And on the age to retire, I was thinking of the Golden Globe Awards. I don't really watch a lot of these award shows, but I passed by as my wife was watching those, and Nikki Glaser was the comic there, and she was looking at Martin Short and Steve Martin, and she was saying, here are two guys who prove that it's never too old to need money. So let's move on here with that conversation. How much should you actually save for retirement? Can you really put a dollar figure on that?
A good rule of thumb for people to understand what their retirement income may look like from their investments is, and we want to figure conservatively, right? We talked about the 4% rule earlier and how that may be actually a little bit more conservative than we need to be. But I would say a good rule of thumb is look at what your investment balance is and maybe look at around 5% of that. So on $1 million, that's $50,000 a year. Now that hasn't considered if you have a pension, Social Security. We haven't talked about maybe your husband or your wife and what they may have. You got to add all that stuff up. But if you have investments, 5% withdrawal rate with someone that's carefully helping you manage that money will help you to be able to spend that 5% and probably grow the money a little bit over time, which is what we want to do. Nobody wants to spend their money down, right? Everybody wants to try to keep it growing.
Right, and you mentioned 5%. 4% used to be the guideline, the 4% rule, but you're saying that that's pretty much out the window for most people?
Yeah, it's a common rule of thumb still. If you go out on the web and you type in, hey, what's a reasonable amount of withdrawal? They're going to tell you 4% adjusted for inflation each year, right? So
right.
I would just say that is a very dumbed down rule of thumb. And looking at this dynamically and what we can actually produce is a different number than that. So I would just encourage people, if you really want to know what that looks like in your situation, give us a call. Let's sit down and let's talk about how you want to retire, when you want to retire, and what that's going to look like.
Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about some questions that you should be asking before you retire. Our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to schedule a conversation with Randy or Jake here at Floyd Financial Group and get those questions answered, no cost, no obligation for this. No judgment. We'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. Another question I've got here, Randy, is do expenses really go down in retirement?
Well,
I can tell by your laughter that it's like not always. Doesn't sound like.
So let's say that you just paid off a house. You have to fill the time that you used to be at work.
Well, yeah, and what you fill it with is the sort of things that you use to spend money on Saturday, and every day is Saturday when you're retired, but there are a lot of other things too, yeah.
So can it be pretty much the same? I would say it could be, yes. Is it slightly more? I would say it could be, yes. And there are people that will say, I commute a long ways to work. That might be something to consider that you don't have to do anymore. Or I don't need my wardrobe that I used to have. Those are some things that might go down. But day-to-day living expenses are going to stay the same. And the fact that you have to fill some of that time generally means you're going to spend at least as much, if maybe not a little bit more money.
Right. And when you go to the gas station, you don't tell the attendant there, listen, I'm retired, so I want a discount on the gasoline. When you go to the supermarket, they don't care whether you're retired. It's still this much a pound for this. Now, if you go through the drive-thru once in a while and you're getting your diet beverage or a cup of coffee, sometimes they will offer a senior discount. But my property taxes don't go down. The cost of health care does not go down. Health care seems to be one of the biggest unknowns, doesn't it, Randy?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it is such a conundrum right now as to what to do with that. I will tell you what needs to happen. My 2 cents, I remember back in the late 80s and the early 90s when HMOs and PPOs came on the scene and really took over health care. And the insurance companies really control what the PPOs, get what everything costs and what they bill. And then the HMOs, the hospitals, basically on the other side of that are doing the same thing with their insurance plans. And there's really no viable competition there. And we need competition. Competition always drives prices down and improves service.
Another question that people ask, Randy, is how much retirement income do I need? It used to be 10 to 12 times your income saved. Is that realistic these days?
That's a pretty stiff number in my estimation. So let's say I'm making $100,000 a year, maybe 10 to 12 times. It makes sense. If I'm making $100,000 a year, 12 times that's $1.2 million.
Right.
That means if I pull a 5% withdrawal, that's $60,000. And then if the husband and wife combined have $40,000 in Social Security, that's going to put them at $100,000. That's probably in the ballpark. Again, that's a guideline, not a guarantee, but that's certainly doable. But again, the thing that is more important is that we sit down and really design a plan and connect that to the client. And it could be that we can do much better than that with less. Is probably a good number. We certainly have a lot of people living on less than that and doing it quite successfully. Now, they're not taking a cruise every week and they're not flying off around the world, but they can still live here in Middle America and do quite well with less than that.
And Randy, another question that people should be asking before they get into retirement is, what about taxes? Nearly half of retirees underestimate taxes. Why is that?
Well, there's some common misconceptions that Social Security is never taxed. Well, that's not true.
This is not true.
So that's one of the things that happens out there. Also, people just don't really understand the difference in taxability in different asset classes. So one of the things we always do is when we're looking at pulling income for people is we're going to talk about the tax burden that they're going to pay, and we're looking to see what their net is going to be hitting their bank account each month.
Final question here, Randy. If people have questions, why should someone consider professional guidance versus just sitting down trying to figure it out on their own?
So the best retirement planning is about coordination of income, taxes, healthcare, estate planning, all of the above. So somebody that's a fiduciary, so somebody that has your best interest and legally has to put your interest above their own is somebody that you want to work with. We are a fiduciary here at Floyd Financial Group. And basically what that means, again, is that we are going to be looking out for your best interest first and foremost, not ours. Now, you would think that would be something that would be just normal.
Right.
But it's really not, because if you're looking at someone that is just strictly a commission salesperson, they're just looking to make a sale. It's kind of like when you go to the car lot and the guy wants to sell you a car.
Yep.
Hopefully they'll give you good guidance and help you pick the right one. But the problem is they only have what they have on the lot to sell.
Right. And
so you want somebody that has a broad base that can offer anything that makes sense for you. And that would be, how we are here at Floyd Financial Group. And we have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. And I was going to say that what they have on the lot many times is more expensive than what you were planning to spend anyway here. We can make a heck of a deal on that. Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Again, Randy, great conversation. I'll talk to our listeners. If you want a clear written retirement plan covering income, investments, healthcare, and taxes all working together, Advisor. Call 417-889-7233 to schedule your complimentary retirement analysis. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. 417-889-7233. You can make that call right now if you want. Randy, it has been a great conversation with you, but unfortunately we're out of time. So for Randy Floyd, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.